And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I am your solo host today, Sarah Burr. JC sends his regards. His day job is getting in the way once again of our pesky, or of these wonderful conversations that we're having. His job is the pesky thing. So we are sending our good wishes to JC because he is going to be very upset to have missed our wonderful guest that we have with us today. We are welcoming back to A Bookish Moment Brandy Schillace, who we had the pleasure of talking about her very first fiction novel, which was The Famed Women of Ardmore House, taking place in Yorkshire, which the scenery alone that Brandy paints in this beautifully atmospheric, cozy mystery, really sings to my England-loving heart. So I'm very happy to be able to talk about Jo Jones and the second mystery that Jo finds herself in as we talk about The Dead Come to Stay. But before we dive into talking about books, I would love to welcome Brandy back to the show. Brandy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Lovely.
We have a lot to catch up on. I believe it's been about 2 years since you last stopped by, and I'm wondering for folks who either have they've not met you before, or they may need a little bit of a refresher. Can you share a little bit about your personal story and what got you into wanting to write mystery fiction?
Sure. So I have a PhD. I'm a historian. I'm a researcher. I've worked in museums. I have a varied life. I write a lot of nonfiction, written nonfiction for years, including for some very large presses, Simon and Schuster, Norton, etc. My fiction books are with HarperCollins. And I'm autistic. I'm autistic and I'm weird. I run a book club myself, which is actually a book show. So similar to this, it's a book show. It's kind of like the Muppet Show. If the Muppet Show is run by Morticia Adams, that's kind of what it's like. And I am like Morticia Adams if Morticia Adams was like a librarian, kind of, and autistic at the same time. I'm sure she was. She probably was an autistic person. I feel this in my book. At least Wednesday is. So I'm somebody who has always wanted to write fiction. I used to write fiction when I was much younger, and then I thought, okay, I'd really like to get back into it. And as a neurodivergent, as an autistic person, I mystery has always felt like a very natural home. I mean, I think about the detectives, like I don't know of a single neurotypical like Nero Wolfe, Hercule Poirot, Sherlock Holmes. None of them are neurotypical people. So it seemed like a good place to be and a good place to
Mm-hmm.
start. So yeah, I kind of wrote my first novel, The Framed Women of Ardmore House, building in this character that I didn't originally think was autistic. I just had based her a bit on myself. And then my agent was like, "It's so great that you have an autistic protagonist." And I was like, whoops. Yes, I guess I do. So I really leaned into that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a beautiful thing. I mean, so many people have talked to me about how they really connected with that. And so, and there's other neurodivergent characters as well in both books. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. So I do all the things. I also do stop motion in my spare time. So
Oh, wow.
I made a stop motion trailer for this book out of out of construction paper cutouts to sort of
Mm-hmm.
mimic the title cover. So, it took like fiendish amounts of time, but that's what special interests are for.
Oh, that sounds absolutely amazing. I love stop motion. There's something that the artistry that goes into just like it's such a labor of love
Oh, it is.
that I can't imagine how
Extraordinarily
much
time consuming.
time that would take. But oh my goodness, you're so much to catch up on. But I want to make sure that I say hello to our wonderful viewers who are joining us live in the chat. We've got Farmhouse Reader
Hello.
saying happy Thursday. We've got Regina saying happy Friday Eve. So yes, we are so close. We don't have
Friday
JC
Eve.
here to say happy baby or baby Friday.
Baby
So I will
Friday.
say it. Baby Friday. Happy baby Friday,
Baby
everybody.
Friday.
So a question about kind of setting the stage for book two, The Dead Come to Stay.
Mhm.
When you had first started writing The Frame Women of Ardmore House, did you have a idea in mind that Jo would continue her story in another mystery? Was it always, this arc that you had in mind, or was this something that just kind of naturally came out of writing the first book?
So, it just so happens that when HarperCollins bought it, they bought it in a two-book deal.
Oh, okay.
So I had to I had to have a second book, but I didn't know what the book was going to be about. So it wasn't until after I completed the first one that I began to see inroads. And the two books are, it's hard to explain. It's definitely a sequel, though you could read them out of order. Like you wouldn't necessarily be confused if you came into book two. Not, it's not an exact sequel, but it is. It builds on a bunch of things that happen. And her choice of occupation in the sequel, where she basically decides to make ends meet. She's an American, I should say. She's an American who's a transplant to
Mm-hmm.
Britain. She inherited some property at her mother's death, and she had nothing else to do because she just gotten a divorce and all these other bad things had happened. So she moves over there. But to make ends meet in this book, she chooses to rent out a room in her cottage as like a holiday let. And that starts the mystery going in the very first chapter or two. So that's what Jo Jones is up to in this one.
And one thing that well, there are many things that I love about it, but the one of my favorite, I guess, I don't even know if it's considered a trope now because more people are gravitating towards it, but I always think of it as like an anti-trope because typically in the cozy mystery genre, we have a detective that is kind of knocking heads with our amateur sleuth. But
Hmm.
in this case, Jo is kind of invited along to cooperate with the detective. Any chance you can tell a little bit or tell us a little bit about your decision to have their relationship be more cooperative rather than confrontational?
Certainly. So, a couple of things that I should mention. I'm a historian, and therefore I rely really heavily on actual fact. In fact, there's
Mm-hmm.
tons of actual research in this book. There's a bunch of art history related to both the mysteries of the first and second book. And that all that history is true. But one of the things that I'm very acutely aware of is that in real life, it's very rare that you can solve a mystery without the help of the police. If you're just on your own, you don't have the background information,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very rare that police will normally kind of let you, especially if they're at loggerheads with you, let you kind of just go your own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I thought, well, I want to do something different and new. I want to make a situation where, within reason, the police actually are, well, maybe not the police, this particular police officer is interested in collaborating with Joe Jones. And some of this is because she confuses him in the first book. And that confusion develops into something of an amorous, connection, at least on his side. He's sort of like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't get my head around this woman. What the heck? I need to find out more about this person. And so he is very amorously connected to her, but also she has this amazing skill for reading books, but also reading situations. And she has a tendency to kind of see details that other people miss. And he knows this. So instead of him pretending, he doesn't have this huge ego where he's like, he is surly. Don't worry. He's surly and prickly as he must be. But he doesn't have this big ego where he wants to take credit. He's more like he's a little bit duelist. He's kind of like help. So for that reason, I have him involved. But also these books are slightly different from most cozies in that it's a two perspective novel, and that's unusual. You have Joe's perspective where you're inside of her head, and then you have McAdam's perspective where you're inside of his head. And the reason I did this is because Joe Jones being autistic, and I tell you, if you are autistic and you're trying to communicate what that's like to other people, what that is an act of translation. And I thought, what better way to show this in action than to first have you inside Joe Jones' head, where you see why she's making the decisions she's making, why she's behaving the way she is, and you think to yourself, yeah, that makes sense. I would do that. Then I show you the exact same situation from the outside, where McAdams is sitting there going, what are you doing? Or it doesn't make any sense. Because
Hmm.
that's what it's like. We make sense to ourselves. We just don't always look like we make sense. So having those two perspectives means you're inside both heads. So you can see her sort of it's similar to like say a Peter Wimsey and Harriet Vane novel from
Hmm.
Dorothy Sayers. You can see inside her head and you can see inside his head, which means you, the reader, have this privileged access to seeing whether or not their feelings for each other are changing over time, which is always a lot of fun and produces a lot of nice angst.
Yes, and also, I mean, it's a relatability factor for I think anybody because of the fact that we all will say things or do things that we think people should be perceiving a certain way, and then it's still like completely like I'll have a
Right.
conversation with my husband and he will completely misinterpret it, and I thought that I've presented my argument or what have you perfectly reasonably.
Right.
So I think that that's something that it's not only a insight into the characters themselves, but it's just like it's the human nature to have this
Yeah.
different perception,
Well,
which I
and
think.
if I give it to you with both of them, then I'm figuring 50% of the people reading it are going to go, Joe Jones makes sense. Why isn't he getting it? And 50% of the people will be going, McAdams makes sense. Why isn't she getting it? And so you kind
Mhm.
of get both sides.
Yeah, and oh god, and the back and forth is such a delight. One you had mentioned that because you are a historian, you love dealing in facts, and you deal in there's lots of rare artifacts and art that is
Hmm.
discussed
Hmm.
in this particular book. I I just think there's something so magical about people uh, that can weave history, that can teach me something into a fiction novel. Um, can you share a little bit about your process? What drew you to the art history focus within this? Because that's something that's one of my favorite things to come across in
Okay.
not only
S-
a mystery but just like a book in general.
So I'm going to tell you guys some facts, some privileged information here. Um, some of that and you're not going to know this. You're going to read the book and be like, "Wow, she had this planned out from book one. She had all of this information about how this was going to. It was amazing. Oh my gosh, it's all connected." And actually, some of that was a complete accident. So, in the first book, there is a mysterious painting that goes missing, sort of this vanishing painting, and
Hmm.
much of the mystery is sort of built around this. And I needed the painting to be by an actual artist, and I knew this was we're in the Pennine region, in the that sort of Yorkshire area, in the Pennines, and I wanted to choose an artist that was period and that would have been active in that area.
Hmm.
And so I had a couple to choose from, and I kind of picked one, and thought, yeah, that's good. We'll go with him. And his name is Augustus John. It's a real painter. And then I built the mystery of the second book and decided after I had the mystery built to do some more back research on Augustus John to weave the painting even further into the story and all these other things. And once I did that, I found out that his personal life weirdly mimicked and was totally in parallel with the story I had developed
Oh man.
prior to me finding out about his backstory. And so everyone's going to look at the first two books and be like, she's a genius. And I'm like, yeah, but actually, no.
But
It
that's
was an
but that's the
accident.
magic. I think that's the magic there because there has to be something within like your sub. I don't know, like that coincidence is wild to me, and that's what I love
And
about.
when you guys read it, you're going to be like, that's real parallel for you not to know. I know, it's crazy.
I mean and that's what makes this like the history. The historical aspect of it so incredible, and another thing that you bring to light, there's a subplot regarding international refugees disappearing,
Yes, yes.
and I mean, holy moly, for those of us that are living in the United States at this point in time, um,
I didn't mean to be that
I
topical.
did like yes, but it goes to show how kind of universal this
Hmm.
really weird. I don't know. We try not to get too political on this show, but I believe that we are all people of one planet. So the fact, like, what was your what was the, I guess, drive purpose? What did
Right.
you aim to show or wish to convey to your audience by kind of weaving this particular thread into the
Well,
book?
there's two ways of answering this. One is that I tend to do two books at a time, because I write in two genres. I write fiction and I write nonfiction. And so well, it's more than one genre actually, or more than two genres. I don't know. There's a lot of genres. I wear a lot of hats.
You work and write a lot.
Yeah, and I do write a lot. So I was working on a nonfiction book called The Intermediaries, which also launched the same year as this
Hmm.
one. So both of them came out last year. The Intermediaries was a history of LGBTQ rights in the Weimar period during the rise of the Nazis. And there's the way the Nazis, villainized immigrants and the way they went after. So this was present in my mind already.
Hmm.
And then, um, so it made sense to kind of piggyback those. I think it was the zeitgeist of my brain. It made sense to do something similar there where and it's true. I mean, immigrants are being villainized, not just in the United States, but all over the world. It's happening
Hmm.
in England. It's happening in all kinds of places. But secondly, one of the reasons that I chose to make Jo Jones as a character a transplant to England is because she's a fish out of water that way. But if you're autistic, that's how you live. Like you are a fish out of water
Hmm.
everywhere you go. You're just a land fish. And essentially,
Hmm.
the immigrant experience is a similar kind of thing. And so there's also some nice parallels to be drawn from the vulnerability of being in a situation that you are unprepared for, or that you can't parse quite right, or that you don't
Hmm.
translate exactly the correctly. And so there was a lot of reasons to make that part of it. And the other thing, simply at the time that I was writing it, there had been a great deal of trouble because of what was happening in Syria, not the Syrian conflict itself, but the knock-on effects of that, how that was affecting art, trade in arts, how that was affecting, like, this is various, I don't want to give too much away, but basically these
Hmm.
ripples in a pond that happen when there is a conflict like that. And then what becomes not just of the refugees, but the cultural artifacts, what becomes of the economies of these places. And so
Hmm.
that was happening while I was writing the book. And that was another thing. Again, very well researched. All the stuff that I talk about there is also true, also actual things. The mystery is not true, but everything else kind of
Hmm.
is. And I've been to most of these places too. So a lot of the places I describe are also real.
So I have to remember to follow up on the place part because I want to go back to just kind of commenting on the fact that by telling these sorts of stories, I just think that you have done such a great service to the immigrant community because it's a reminder of humanity and like
Mm,
what
hmm.
we are what people experience. And I really love that, kind of likening your analogy of like a fish out of water. And often I think, especially with the vilification of immigrants, that we have that people will believe whatever they see on the news, but when they're
Right.
reading and experiencing these stories, it just shines such a different light
You're
on.
inside their heads and hearts.
Yeah.
They become real to you. And the other thing is that as an autistic person living in the United States with RFK Jr. telling everybody like
Oh.
that the worst thing you could be is autistic. I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm better than polio. But like having me in your dining room versus having polio, I'm better. I'm a better choice. But that there is this beleaguered sense in which there's a lot of attacks on LGBTQ, on autism, on immigrants, all of these things. That was also true in the book that I was researching on Weimar Germany, right, leading up to the Nazi takeover. It was also similar. They were going against women. They were attacking LGBTQ people. They were attacking immigrants. They were basically anyone they put in the other category, right,
Hmm.
or minority category. Whether you were black or whether you were all these different things kind of combined. And we're sort of living through a moment where we're seeing some of that again. And so I wrote the book and I make those people they become allies in the course of the story. So there's LGBTQ characters, there's autistic characters, there's also an ADHD character, there's older people, there's younger people, there's people of different color, people of different race. One of the main detectives is from Newcastle. She's this sort of like hard tough Newcastle black woman who, grew up difficult. And then there's an Irish woman who
Hmm.
comes out of whose father was in the IRA. And so you have all of these outcasts who end up coming together in the story to
Hmm.
support one another as a community to try and solve mysteries and stop basically evil billionaires. Basically, but the
Yep.
bad guys, trust me, you're not going to like the bad guys. The bad guys, bad billionaires.
I, gosh, that's one thing about, I think, that the cozy mystery genre does so well as a whole is creating these diverse communities where everybody comes together to help and to defeat evil. And I just love to hear it. I love to see that representation in
Yeah.
these stories, because
And
I
also,
think,
I should say, that's not giving away the murder mystery or telling you who the murderer is. There's just bad billionaires kind of in all my books.
oh yeah.
All my books,
Um,
if some, there's just some rotten rich people in them.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I can imagine especially in the setting that you have, that there's a lot of old money that people are that you're dealing with, and people who have that generational wealth that has
Yeah.
been defined by kind of being built on the backs of others. So maybe focusing a little bit on the setting that you have chosen for this series, and you had mentioned, Joe is an American. And when we had initially connected, I wondered, it's like, oh, I wonder if, you had chosen to do an American protagonist because it is easier to maybe make mistakes in the area and have that be okay. Because I mean, if I was writing a book that took place in England, I would probably spell things incorrectly. I would probably like call things incorrectly. I'd always say an apartment rather than a flat. Things along that
Got
nature.
it.
Was that something that that you had to put into the story, but because you're such a good researcher and a historian, like you obviously know these facts. So how do you balance being American versus being the educated person of the area that you are writing about?
Well, partly I'm a terrible American. I'm no good at it at all because I'm not. I've lived abroad, so I live in the United States now. Again, I've just lived. I've had residencies. I'm actually going for a residency again in May in Manchester, and so I have lived over there often enough that I've picked up a lot of things. And as a matter of fact, I'm always pronouncing things wrong over here, and I keep spelling. Like I tend to use British spellings and get in trouble with it with my publishers, like, why do you keep spelling this way? And I'm like, because it's right. No, sorry, it's wrong. So that's what I say. Garage. I realize that's
I,
not how
I
you
mean,
pronounce it over
I
here.
love all things. I'm a total Anglophile. So it's just like, I love how they speak. I love I love spelling color with a U. I
You're right.
love, yeah, like it just adding more to, that just adds like an extra level of
Sitting in
artistry to
aluminum
it.
chairs. Yeah. So part of it is that I've spent a lot of time over there.
Hmm.
Part of it is that my best friend is from Yorkshire,
Oh, right.
and I talk to him 3 or 4 times a week. And so, there's it's almost to the point where it's so mixed that I have trouble extricating myself to figure out what's what,
Hmm.
and who calls what and and what kind of. But it did require research because I am very concerned about dialect.
Hmm.
And that's because, as a matter of fact, in both the first and the second mysteries, dialect, the detective is quite aware of accents because if you and this is less, it's not unheard of in the United States too. You can tell the difference between a Southern accent and a Boston accent and etc. But if you weren't from here, it just all sounds vaguely American. And so we tend to think there's an English accent when in fact
Hmm.
there's literally like you can go 2 blocks and hear another one. And they know the differences between those.
Hmm.
They can tell a Midlands person from an Uplands person, and it's not just Scottish versus Irish versus continental kind of. It's even, are you in Newcastle or are you a Geordie? Geordie is another type of slang dialect that's in Newcastle, but is different from the Newcastle
Hmm.
dialect. And so the mysteries kind of hinge on some of these tiny minor details. And my reason for doing that isn't just because I'm a nerd, though that is part of it. It's because Jo Jones, as this autistic person who picks up on tiny, minute details, and she does this because when you're neurodivergent, and I'm going to use autism because that's my particular one, but you spend a lot of your time being told you're not behaving right or not acting right or not responding right. So you start studying human nature like it's your job, and you're trying to figure out, like, okay, if they raise their eyebrows like that, what does that mean? And if they quirk their mouth like that, are they sad? Are they happy? What does that mean? And so she has become this overreader of human behavior and the way they talk and everything. And so she picks up on these things. And so by weaving those into the story, this is partly what makes her useful to the solving of the mystery. It's like her
Hmm.
special skill that allows her that, and the fact that she has uh an amazing capacity for getting into danger somehow, is partly what makes her useful to the books and to the story and to the solving of the mysteries.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love hearing about your process, Brandy. It's so fascinating. And folks, The Dead Come to Stay is available now. It is on available all book retailers. Highly, highly recommend. Do we have we have about 4 minutes left, Brandy, and I have so many more questions about the work that you've been doing. So in that limited time, for folks that want to keep up, that want to stay connected with you, hear about what's going on, keep in touch with all of your projects, where are the best social platforms to find you
Mm,
on? Newsletter, things like that. What's your preferred way of staying
right.
connected to readers?
So probably my newsletter I typically run through the Peculiar Book Club, and
Hmm.
you can go to thepeculiarbookclub.com and it'll take you. You can sign up for the newsletter. You'll get newsletters about my book club, but you'll also get all of them start with what's called Brandy's Musings, which is almost always weird shit. You'll appreciate it. You know, it's just weird stuff. So there's Brandy's Musings, and then you can find me. I'm mainly on Blue Sky, so I do
Okay.
have a Facebook account and stuff, but I have 40,000 followers on Blue Sky, or roughly. I'm there all the time. I do respond. I do talk to people. You can reach me on my website is brandyschillace.com. If you can spell my name, you can find it. And I have an email form there if you want to get in touch. But yeah, you'll hear lots about what I'm working on: fiction, nonfiction, the thriller I'm working on, social justice issues I'm chasing down, my cats, also my cats, mostly my cats. If you're on social media, you'll see a lot about my
We
cats.
love hearing about cats.
They're both black, the little black cats.
Oh,
They're great.
the and I would love to know, you have a podcast, or Unsolved Mysteries of Medicine. Is that
Oh yeah, that's actually not a podcast. That's a program.
a
I'm
program?
the host of a 10 episodes, one series. Sorry, one season, 10 episodes. It's on what's it called? Wondrium or Great Courses channel. And it's me. I'm the
Oh, it's the
host.
great.
I talk about all sorts of weird things that happen to you medically. Um, everything from strange disorders that we still haven't solved,
Hmm.
tree man disease, people whose skin turns to bark. I know, it's weird.
Oh.
There's some weird stuff in there. I'm also, that's my show. I'm the host of
Hmm.
that. I'm also on The Unbelievable with Dan Aykroyd, and History's Greatest Mysteries with Lawrence Fishburne, and Secrets Declassified with David Duchovny. Those three are on the History Channel.
That is
And
beyond
then
cool.
my show is on Great Courses or Wondrium. I forget what it's called now. Um,
Excellent. Ooh,
yeah, then
awesome.
I have the podcast show and the YouTube show and
When
things
do you sleep?
on planes often.
That is a good place to catch up on your rest. One thing that we love to do to kind of wrap up our time together, Brandy, is a what are you reading? What are you listening to? Watching on TV? Anything that's entertaining you, bringing you joy, interesting for you to watch or read lately. We're always looking for stuff to add to our reading lists beyond The Dead Come to Stay. If you have any
Sure. So
recommendations for
I've
us.
been going backwards into. I should also mention the first book of The Dead Come to Stay is a screenplay now, so we're kind of hoping that will end up on TV at some point, which would be lovely.
Fingers crossed.
But right now I've been going backwards in time. I actually I got in. I had this hankering lately to read things that were 1920s, 1930s. So I started again from the top and all the way through the series of the Peter Wimsey mysteries by Dorothy
Oh,
Sayers. So
nice.
I started with
Mm-hmm.
the first one and I walked all my. I'm now at Gaudy Night, which is I think the last but one of this Peter Wimsey books that Dorothy Sayers herself wrote. Now there were some. She died before she finished the last one it was finished by another person who then went on to write a couple more. But I'm reading the last of the books that were specifically done by her. And what's shocking to me about them is how modern they are. Like they'll say things and I'm like, oh, that's still a thing. Like, like because Harriet Vane is a character and she's this very like forward thinking woman and she says things and I'm like, oh, it's not any better. Oh, it's the same. 1935 and today it's not that different, but it's quite good. That's what I've been reading lately. It's giving me so much pleasure, and I think I would recommend it to anyone because I know that we all feel a little bit overawed by everything that's happening right now and all of the just muckety muck and it's just terrifying. You're reading news all the time. So, she wrote these books in between the two wars. And so they take place between the First and Second World War, which was an equally fraught time in Europe. And yet here you can read these books full of fun mysteries and people are making art and they're making movies and or not movie, but they're writing books and they're doing things. And so, we need to remember that just because times are upsetting, things were certainly upsetting in the period between the 20s and 40s.
Yes.
Just because things are upsetting does not mean that you can't make great art and that you can't enjoy good art and you can't sit down with a wonderful book. So reading them reminds me that this is not the first time humanity has been through a period of instability, and that we shouldn't feel like, oh, I guess there's no point in me doing. No, there is. There's absolutely a point in you buying that book and reading that book or writing that book for that matter, and enjoying yourself because hope and culture and joy and art. I mean, if we aren't doing those things, then what's the point, right?
Yep.
What are you fighting for then?
That is such a good reminder, and I loved how you phrased that with, we can't stop, and yes, the world feels very, very heavy and oppressive. But in order to kind of keep up the good fight, we have to sustain ourselves and keep ourselves full of joy and, and have that hope to keep moving forward. So brilliant sentiment.
And do things that you enjoy. I don't know. I don't know if your readers or your watchers, listeners are commenting in the chat, but I hope you guys are doing things you enjoy. I hope you're doing things that you love, and you have every right to love them. Do not like right now. Don't yuck people's yums. Or I tell people they're like, oh, things are so bad. How can you be happy about whatever? How can you be? Because that's necessary to survive.
Yep.
So yeah, go do things you love.
That is such what a perfect way to sign off for this episode, because that's what we want to encourage people. Like, this is a happy, fun time for you guys to relax, to enjoy reading, to enjoy books, to enjoy wonderful authors like Brandy Schillace. Brandy, we are so happy to have you back here, and so excited to hear more about what's coming in the future. Really quickly, any projects that you can tell us about that you have on the horizon that we can look forward to after we've read The Dead Come to Stay?
I am just putting the finishing touches, doing a final revision of my thriller, which hasn't been sold yet. I have to give it to my agent so she can go out and sell it, but theoretically it'll be out at some point in the future. Let's fingers crossed there. That one's called A Thin Black Seam, and it is a thriller that takes place in a coal town. I'm also working on a new nonfiction book, this one about being neuroatypical and how all of us, like how neurotypicality is such a tiny, narrow window. A very strange thing to call normal when so few people are that. So we'll be looking at that as a nonfiction.
Well, so much to look forward to. We hope that you'll come back and chat with us again. It's always like you're a wealth of knowledge. It's a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for spending time with us. To our wonderful audience members who joined us live today, we appreciate you being here. We will have another episode for you next week. On Tuesday, we're going to be joined by Judge Thomas Cullen to talk about his nonfiction project. I think that'll be the first judge that we've had on the show. So it should be interesting to dive into the world of what goes on behind the bench. But as always, folks, thank you for your support. Like and subscribe to our channel. We're hoping to reach that 1,000 subscriber threshold this year. And as we head into the weekend, everybody be well and stay bookish. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.